things out. Belugas live in the Arctic. Very good. What other animals live in the Arctic? I heard polar bears and I heard penguins. Only one of those answers is correct. Polar bears is correct. Misconception about penguins, they're found up north. They're actually not. They're actually southern hemisphere animals. You'll never find them north of the equator or the Galapagos Islands, which are right smack on the equator, as north as they possibly get. But there are smaller black and white birds, you might call puffins, lots of other birds as well. Seals, I was looking for, and also people. The lives of people, the lives of belugas are shaped by the extreme Arctic environment that they are found in. Now, if we were to describe that extreme Arctic environment, we'd come up with words like cold, ice, snow, and wind. And those are all very accurate words to describe that ecosystem, so we have to obviously be well adapted if we're going to live there, and these whales are no exception to that rule. These animals have, they have small appendages, particularly if you take a look at their flukes, as I do believe Keela is going to demonstrate for us. Very nice. That fluke doesn't have a lot of blubber, so it's very small. And the reason why is because she's going to lose a lot of body heat because of the lack of blubber. So the smaller the appendage is, the less heat she's going to lose to the frigid underwater environment. You may notice the same thing with their pectoral flippers as well. But don't let the small tails and the small flippers fool you. These animals are incredibly acrobatic, well, at least for their size. You got to keep it all in perspective. And they do have the ability to get above the water surface. And where did Keela go? Wait for it! That's pretty impressive. Let's give a round of applause. Obviously, they're not the only animals who have adapted to that life. People have as well. 85% of the human populations in the Arctic are Inuit, and Inuit populations have been living there for a whopping 5,000 years. Now, I can't imagine living in such a cold environment for such an extended period of time, but people have managed to do it by living almost completely off the land, and belugas are a fine example of that. A lot of the essential vitamins and nutrients that you and I get in our daily consumption of fruits and vegetables are the same nutritional elements that people up north get when they consume the meat or the blubber off of a beluga. And if you take a look at Keela, you can see she's got a lot of blubber on her body, so you can imagine how long a beluga of her size would sustain a community for an extended period of time. It's very important to note that, particularly because the fruits, the vegetables, the greens that I talked about, they don't grow in abundance in the Arctic, and it can be very difficult at times to ship them up there. So there is no question these animals are integral to human survival in that area. Is anyone visiting us from the Arctic at all? Alaska, Northwest Territories, Yukon, Nunavut? No one? No one, which is fair enough. It happens quite a bit, but we do get guests visiting us from up north who can attest to that lifestyle. But the reality is, most of us come from warmer places. But if you're not from the Arctic, you're still shaping that ecosystem each and every day, whether you're driving a car, whether you're paying your taxes electronically, or watching TV, whatever you're doing, you're pumping carbon dioxide up into the atmospheric layer. Now, carbon goes up, and it basically gets stuck in the atmosphere and wraps the planet in a great big carbon blanket. Now, we've worn a blanket at one point or another, and when we do, our body temperatures shift, change, and the same goes for our planet. In the Arctic, it's felt as an increase in temperature. Now, what does that mean? Well, Keela's got her mouth wide open, which probably means food goes in here. And yes, food does go in there, and food is what it boils down to. The ice surface in the Arctic is a spawning ground for green sea ice algae, a lot of plant-like organisms which are going to feed invertebrate animals like amphipods, isopods, sea slugs, sea worms, sea stars, nudibranchs, hundreds upon hundreds of others. Now they're going to feed fish populations, and whales like Keela and people rely on that fish as a form of sustenance. Now if we see ice continuing to shift and change at the rate that it is, we would actually see a full-blown collapse of the Arctic food chain, which is frightening to think about considering it's one of the most prolific marine ecosystems on our planet. Now, we've established that energy consumption is one of the leading causes of climate change, but it's also fair to say that the northern communities that I've been talking about, they just don't consume that much energy. It's usually big cities that do that. Now, Canada's two most populated cities are Toronto and Montreal. Anyone visiting us from those areas or those surrounding areas today? Where are you from?
Toronto.
From Toronto, excellent. Where are you from, sir? You're from Kingston, so you're the same neck of the woods. You both live very close to a small population of belugas. Did you know that? Did you know that? You did? You didn't? There you go. 1,000 belugas that live in the St. Lawrence River. Now, it's not to say you could open your door on Yonge Street or RC and be like, hey, look, belugas! No, definitely not a princess, I guess, is a bit straight. I just couldn't think of one. You can't see belugas there, but it's a bit of a drive. Much faster than we could. But I'm assuming you folks don't eat belugas for sustenance. No. But people do rely on them in a different way. They rely on them from an economic perspective. Now, there are several whale-watching companies in those areas which try and go out and get a glimpse of these amazing animals. And if they're lucky, I do mean very lucky, they'll see some pretty amazing aerials and acrobatics, like we've already seen from Keela today. But really, folks, the most exciting behavior you will ever see from a beluga is, well, one that might not get enough credit. Here it comes. Ta-da! Look at her go! That's it, Nikki? That's it. Alright. Now, it might not look very exciting to the untrained eye, but that's a huge research tool. Take a look at Keela's back. She's got that bumpy cartilage. We call that her dorsal ridge, and she has it instead of a dorsal fin. Now, by taking pictures of the dorsal ridge, scientists can identify individual belugas and track where they're going or where they've been. It allows us to create what's called a photo ID catalog, and really allows us to